Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 91 of Nostalgia Talk. I'm James, and before I introduce the guest, a lot of the time in the intros to these shows, I like to talk about the people in my life, and continuing with that, I'd like to send a congratulations to one of my longtime friends, Maggie Andrew. Maggie and I grew up together. We went through elementary school, junior high, and high school together. And this past Friday, June 14th, Maggie released her very first ever EP in the music business. So Maggie, congratulations on that. It's funny, I went to one of her, she was doing a little concert a couple of months ago, and I went to it, and at first it was like, oh, it's just like watching a friend perform. But it wasn't like, in a school talent show doing like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Wheels on the Bus. This was a full-on concert, and it was her own songs, which was incredibly cool. And so I'm like, okay, watching my friend perform her original stuff. And then she gets the audience to sing with her. And I'm like, I looked at one of my friends. I was like, do you want to cry? She was like, yeah, I do. I was like, yeah, I kind of do too. So Maggie, congratulations. I'm really, really proud of you. I think you're going to go places. So now on with the show. Joining me is Richard Termine.
How do you do, James? It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me to talk with you.
Well, thank you for coming. It's so crazy. I've always read your name as Termine. I don't know if you get that a lot.
I do indeed. It's an Italian, Sicilian origin to the name, and possibly in some spellings with an I at the end. So Termini Termini is the pronunciation, anglicized American pronunciation we use.
Well, there we go. For anybody who doesn't know, Richard is a puppet builder, puppeteer, and also a photographer who's done a lot of work in puppetry for theater and also television and movies, most specifically with Sesame Street as pretty much all three of what I said, puppeteer, puppet builder, and on-set photographer. A lot of the photos of Muppets with celebrities, a lot of the photos of Muppets in episodes, a lot of photos of Muppets with their performers. Those were more often than not taken by Richard. He also built the characters of Placido Flamingo, Wolfgang the Seal, and Meryl Sheep. And in his working with the Muppet Workshop, was involved in specials such as Big Bird in Japan, Don't Eat the Pictures, and the films Follow That Bird and The Muppets Take Manhattan, and also works for the O'Neill Puppetry Conference.
Yes, indeed. You've done your research. Thank you, James, very much. I am very impressed.
Well, thank you. How did the O'Neill conference go this year? I was talking to Pam Arciero about that.
It was beautiful. Just a wonderful, it's the development of new work. We have guest artists there, mentoring many participants, and we do a showcase, two showcases of an evenings, Friday and Saturday, this past Friday and Saturday night. And the work was truly wonderful. A surprising and engaging range of work, I must say.
Paul Rudolph told me that he took Jim Krupa's class in mechanisms.
See, that was in the pre-conference and I wasn't there.
Okay.
It's fun to hear. Very nice.
Yeah.
And Paul is the music director on Sesame Street.
And a previous guest.
Wonderful.
I've interviewed both Pam and Paul.
Great. And what about Leslie, his wife? Have you interviewed her yet?
I have indeed. Yep, Paul.
Excellent.
When I was finished recording, he's like, just a second, I'm gonna go get my wife. Brings Leslie over, and he's like, Leslie, you've got to meet this guy. This is James. He's like a walking encyclopedia of all things Muppets, and I'm still very, very close with them.
Oh, wonderful! A great couple, talented, and just so wonderful in terms of their friendship and all that they create. So I'm glad to hear that you met them and are friends with them.
All that they create, especially when Abby sings. Of course, Paul's in charge of that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, working together.
So let's begin with, how did you become interested in puppetry?
Well, as a youth, in my youth, I was building and playing with puppets and dolls at a very young age. And then in elementary school, a marionette production of Rigoletto was a school assembly program that came in, and it was like an aha moment in which I just was so taken by the production and by the power of it, the music, that I immediately went to the library and started, took out books on puppetry and marionettes in particular, and started to build my own puppets. and from there it was continuing on. In high school, well, I joined the Puppeteers of America, and in high school, I met one of Frank Ballard of the University of Connecticut puppetry program. I met one of his students, and she, when I was a junior in high school, took me up to the University of Connecticut, and they were rehearsing The Love for Three Oranges. So I got to go to a rehearsal of that, eventually saw the production, and met Frank Ballard. And that summer, this is the summer of 1970, there was a National Puppetry Festival at the University of Connecticut, and I was able to puppeteer on that production. Some of the students in return that summer who were performing in it during the semester and during the run of it during the semester. So I got to perform in that production, and then applied for UConn to go as a theater major, as an undergraduate, and eventually a graduate student. And so got my undergraduate degree and my graduate degree, my MFA at UConn in puppetry.
Yukon, not to be confused with the Canadian territory. I'm making fun of my sister's girlfriend.
There you go. There. Yes, a very different distinction. Very different place.
So you were interested in both performing and building. How did that eventually lead to the Muppets?
Well, very interesting for me, I guess, is that theater was my first love, and of course, puppetry. And my strength was in building and designing, but also as a director's eye, I think. And that's where at UConn, at my MFA, I was able to do my own production. I had to direct, design, and I did a production of De Gelderode's The Death of Dr. Faust. And I did it in the Mobius Theater, which is a multi-platformed sort of an environmental space. And so we used life-size puppets, and it was very much the relationship of the puppeteer to the puppet and masked actors. So a very expressionistic production. And so there, my interest was very much in theater and puppet theater, and not so much in TV originally. And after that, after graduating, I went and I was teaching upstate New York at a couple of different colleges there, and designing and directing. And then I finally said I wanted to get the experience of professional experience. I felt like I was teaching, but I really didn't have the expertise of the professional theater. And a friend that I had worked with and gone to school with at UConn, Jan Stafira Rosenthal, was working at Muppets. And so there was an international festival in 1980, and at the Kennedy Center and in Washington, D.C., which Jim Henson was sort of the president or the sponsor of. And Jan came in from London from Muppet Show, and I came down from the college I was teaching at, and I asked her to get me an interview. She got me an interview at Muppets, which I immediately, on my way back, I'm from Connecticut originally, so on my way back home, I went for an interview and got a job. Just a temporary job, actually, in the Muppet workshop for a couple of months on it was a Sesame Street build, a Sesame Street Live build. So it was building costume characters. And so that was my first job. And then I went freelance after that, and I had to get back into, I got back into working at Muppets over the next several months from week to week. And within that time, within the year, Carolee Wilcox, who was the head of the workshop, literally, I was in the art department working there just as a temp, and she tapped me on the shoulder. She knew my background. I had worked on the Sesame Live, and she said, "How would you like to join our team for Sesame Street in the workshop?" And that's how I started full time in the workshop on Sesame Street as a designer builder.
And a few years ago, very sadly, Carolee Wilcox passed away.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
and she's somebody that not that we don't hear a lot about in things like these. What was she like?
She was very very experienced, very knowledgeable, a wonderful designer in terms of the character she created, and very supportive. And in terms of working on Sesame Street, for example, we would build there for scripts that we received for the season. But she was very astute in terms of having us go on set. There were Sesame Wranglers, and those that are on set that maintain the characters and rig them for the daily shooting of the show. But back the designers that are in and builders that are in the workshop, she would, if we built something or design something, she would have us go on set that day. So to follow through on our work, to see how it was rigged, to rig it for the puppeteers and to learn from that experience. So really a very strong guiding hand in terms of our development and our work in the workshop and on set.
And what was Jim Henson like?
Oh, well, he was remarkable. I mean, I want to say very low key, and a very quiet in intensity to his work. But watching him on set, watching him work, was a marvel. Him and Frank Oz, for example, doing Ernie and Bert, to see them read through the script and then talk it through and then play with Ernie and Bert, play with their characters and let the scene percolate with them, evolve, and being true to the writing, but at the same time, these were their characters, and to see them like a Laurel and Hardy to play together and let the action of the scene play out in wonderful ways. And I have to say, we see this on set today with the characters, with these performers. There's a whole new generation that have taken over these characters. And I often think if Jim was there to see what great hands these characters are in today, how happy he would be, how pleased he would see how these characters live on, how they are true to what he established, and how they play in the same sense that he played with Frank in terms of working out bits of action and keeping it organic and real and playful and yet true to the characters.
That's really sweet. Yeah, I do believe that Jim would be very happy to see, and not just with Sesame Street, with a lot of the stuff that they're doing now with the Muppet Show characters and the reboots of Fraggle Rock. Like,
Yes.
That's become a big hit, and it's even more diverse now. Like the new Fraggle Rock series is even more diverse now than the original.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And one of the wonderful things I got to do with Jim is in 1987, he taught a 3-week puppet video workshop in Charleville-Mézières.
Mm-hmm.
And there were students from all over the world, and I went as his assistant. So I did the building with the participants, the building of the Muppet style, mouth puppet style puppets for the workshops and his teaching. And we did videos the last week. We went around the town. They created story boards, and we shot short 10-minute videos with the characters that they created. So I got to do some of the camera work on that. And it was quite remarkable. And I was also, at this time, I was starting to explore photography. So I was also on my own documenting him teaching and documenting the whole experience. And I got some remarkable images, I must say, out of that, being in that proximity to him and the work. So that was another, just a rewarding, really a wonderful experience in every way.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, with you working in the Muppet workshop, as I
Yes.
said in the intro, you did a lot of you had some involvement in Sesame Street specials and in films as well.
Right.
So, for Don't Eat the Pictures and Big Bird in Japan, did you actually go on location?
Yes, I did. Carol Lee, again, delegating responsibility several times, gave me the responsibility to head up the Wranglers and the Muppet production people on set. And I mean by the Wranglers, not the performers, but this has everything to do with the characters, the puppet characters, and the rigging and the supporting and organizing all of that. So I also did that for Follow That Bird in Toronto when the movie was shot. and Don't Eat the Pictures, and then Big Bird in Japan. So that was it was wonderful to be able to travel and to have those experiences.
And with Don't Eat the Pictures, like that's in the same area as where you shoot Sesame Street. It's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Right. So that was
And
at the museum, and we were at night. We were at the at nighttime when the museum was closed.
mhm.
We were shooting that, and I don't know if I was I don't know if I was the head of the organization, the Muppet puppet wranglers at that point. This was early on in my career with Muppets, but I definitely, like, there was a floating collar that I had to build and
Oh
rig.
yeah, the cat,
Yes,
the
exactly.
ghost cat.
Yeah, so that was my rig on that. That was one of the challenges I had that she gave me to do. So that
Mhm.
was fun. And
Noel
I saw
McNeil, Noel McNeil, when he came on this show a while ago, he remembered that while they were shooting at night, he's like, it's a little creepy at night when we've got the place to ourselves. Did you feel that?
Yes, the other thing is I remembered that we were escorted, not so much the puppeteers, but we had our puppets and all of the puppets and the materials stored in one area of the Met. And whenever we had to go back to get a puppet or whatever, we were escorted through the museum for security purposes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so and one of the highlights also was, well, Caroline Kennedy was the liaison between the Sesame Workshop, Children's Television Workshop, and the museum. And the last day of the shoot was on the steps exterior of the museum, and there was a food cart and with Cookie Monster, and Cookie Monster eating everything up.
That was my favorite scene in the whole special when Bob's like, Cookie Monster, I am so proud of you. That the whole time, not once, no matter how tempted you were, did you eat any of the pictures or any of the statues. And Cookie
Yeah.
Monster is like, yeah, sure, there's food right next to me. And Bob's like, well, you know what, Cookie Monster, because you were so good, it's like a parent rewarding a child for good behavior.
Yeah.
You can have whatever you want. You can have a hot dog, hamburger, ice cream bar, Cookie Monster. What do you want? You name it. Well, and the thing is, Bob doesn't realize who he's asking. So,
Yes,
so he's
and
like,
he goes after the whole.
are you going to eat hot dog? Stand.
Oh, that's
I
a
could just
great voice,
imagine,
by the way. Great.
thank you. I could just imagine how pissed off the hot dog guy would have been. Like, pardon me, but you owe me a crap ton of money
Yeah.
now for destroying that because I have to get it
Yeah.
replaced, and that costs another lot of money.
Yes, and that was the director of the museum that was in that playing the hot dog man, a position like that. So yes, and the other thing that happened is I'm standing there with Carol Lee between takes. There was a break or whatever. We're staying with the puppets and all, and Jackie Onassis Kennedy, the former first lady, comes across the street and comes and visits with us. And we got
Oh.
to talk to her briefly because her daughter was on the production and she lived right across the street. So that was pretty amazing to be able to meet John Kennedy's, the first lady, on that shoot. But that's who Caroline's mother was,
Right.
So anyway, so that was pretty special.
Mm-hmm. And then Follow That Bird happened, but that was not in New York. That was in Toronto.
Right.
And of course, in addition to filming on location in like cornfields and farms and stuff like that,
Yes, yes.
and carnivals, they basically rebuilt the entire Sesame Street set.
Right. And the interesting thing that you mentioned that is that there was never an across the street from 1, 2, 3 and all of that and the Fix-It shop.
Yeah,
So
that's what I thought was so cool about that movie, is that because it's a film, like I mean, it's one thing for a TV show to have its setting in the
yeah,
same places you see, but if it's a movie, you want to expand.
yes. So they had to create that. And I remember there was some sort of like, oh, is this what they think it will look like? This sort of not well, that's not how we saw it, but that's what's there and that's what it is. So of course they went with it, but it was interesting to see that that's the possibility of what was there for the first time.
So in the Muppet Workshop responsibilities for that movie,
Yes.
what were your contributions?
Well, it's all the rigging that needs to be done.
Mhm.
And there were new characters, like there were the Dodo family, I remember. And then we built a whole boardroom. There's all those characters in the boardroom. So each of us in the workshop got to design and build a character for that boardroom scene. things like that. And the other thing that was fun is the last scene is when Big Bird returns and he's himself again, and they needed some more extras. So all of us got to be in that scene greeting Big Bird.
Oh, so you're in that scene as well?
Yeah, the very quick pan around the crowd greeting Big Bird. So to be in
Because
there,
I knew that Noel McNeil was.
yes. So there's a group of us that are in there to greet Big Bird and all. So
All
which is
right. Well, there's some facts for anybody from Muppet Wiki who's listening to this.
yes, to see if you can pick us out.
Hmm. Hmm. Before then, and in between Don't Eat the Pictures and Follow That Bird, you got to work on the film Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yes, and I must say that my contribution was only a few days work on that, to
Okay.
be honest with you, because we were basically doing prep for Sesame. And
Hmm.
I would say, through the years, I was there in the workshop about 7 years, and I want to say, 65% of my time was on Sesame Street, and then peripherally, I would work on other projects like Fraggle Rock and the movies, but that wasn't my main focus. And I also worked for exhibits. I worked with Leslie Ash, who headed up the Muppet exhibits. So I did a lot of installations and supporting those exhibits that she designed. And that was fun. There was Art of the Muppets that was touring, and then when
Oh
Dark
yeah, I
Crystal,
have the book Art of the Muppets
oh,
here.
very nice. Beautiful catalog, right?
Oh yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And
Hmm.
then when Dark Crystal came out, we did an exhibit at Lincoln Center that Jim was very big on presenting the characters out there for exhibition and really and promoting that his work through that.
Hmm. And Big Bird in Japan. I mean, that's leaving the continent. That's
Yeah,
going
yeah, yeah.
overseas.
Yeah, so that was pretty special to experience that. And we moved around with that on location. Um, and several things I remember from that is that John Stone wrote that and directed that. And I remember him with the crew and all in terms of negotiating. It was a very interesting, and I mean this in the most, I love Japan and it's a very positive thing, but the Japanese approach to the work was very much out of a few things, making things happen. And John was very much needing more physical production to see his vision. So there was negotiation on that in terms of making a reality out of the world that he had imagined for Big Bird in Japan. Um, another highlight I remember is that one of the locations we went to, there was a home for severely handicapped the populace that was severely handicapped and bedridden, as a matter of fact. And we went into it. It was near a location we were shooting, and we went in with Big Bird and I think Barkley. And it was an amazing experience to see the reactions and to see these people that were bedridden, to see these characters with them and encountering them. We were all in tears, I have to tell you, experiencing that. And it's something I will never forget. But
Yeah, I worked at a homeless shelter for a bit on and off when I was in my last year of college. And I remember going there for the first time. It was like in the middle, it was during COVID, and there was a lot of preparation that was being made for when we were coming out of lockdown. So I went to see it. And it was I didn't see anybody there, but just knowing that what I was going to be doing for a while was just
yes,
like, okay, we're doing a good thing for these people who are struggling, but at the same time, you can't help but just think about what they must be going through.
yes, yes. And to see the reaction to these fantasy characters that come to life uh, is a thing. It's just beautiful. It's just for a momentary experience for that sort of fantasy to happen in front of them. And we take it for granted for the most part because we live with it, working with it. But to see that, it's like Little Amal, the puppet that has been touring the world. I don't know if you, with Handspring, that goes around the world and is out in the streets and all for people encountering. I photographed several of those encounters, and it just people that don't live with that fantasy and those characters. It's amazing to see people's reaction.
Yeah, that's something I talk about with Muppet performers a lot. Not like people's reaction when they're like struggling, like people who are in homes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because of course, like I've heard Lou Berger. I'm good friends with Lou. Lou and I were
Yes.
once talking about when kids from Make-A-Wish Foundation would come to the Sesame Street
Oh,
set, and Kevin would have Elmo on his hand, and it was just like they don't care about Kevin, they care about Elmo. Like Kevin is just like the invisible man, basically.
exactly.
Elmo is what they want to see.
Yes. And I photographed we had one on this past season.
Oh
And
wow.
oh yeah, they continue to do that.
Hmm.
And it's remarkable. And this one boy was losing his sight, a very little toddler. And these were some of the last things that he was going to see. You realize the how important it is, and also how the child can be very overwhelmed by the experience. But with these Muppet performers, these Sesame Street performers, within 20 minutes, they've got the kid in the palm of their hand, and the kids are just led around, and they're sharing with the family, the child, and by the end, they don't want to leave.
Hmm.
Recently, they had the little kid doing the clapper on camera for the take. It was magical. That's how generous and just the whole environment is on set. It's truly wonderful.
I saw a documentary, an old Sesame Street documentary, where there were kids on the set, and Jerry had the Count on his hand, and Frank had Grover on his hand. And again, like all they see is the Count and Grover. They don't see Jerry, and they don't
Yeah,
see Frank.
yeah.
And like the Count's like, "Do you have a little kiss?" Ah, that is one kiss, two kisses. And like you see the Count counting on TV basically every day, and now a child is actually seeing it with their eyeballs.
Yes, yes, in the 3D. Yes,
Pretty much.
right, speaking right to them. Yes.
Hmm. So, as I mentioned, I've talked to Sesame Street writers on the show before. Besides Lou, I've talked to Norman, I've talked to Emily Kingsley.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to be talking to Ken Scarborough next, actually, the current head writer.
Yes.
And
Excellent.
another person that I talked to a while ago was Mark Saltzman, and we were talking about him creating Placido Flamingo, which is a character who you built. So I haven't really talked to a lot of puppet builders from Sesame Street on this podcast before, so I don't really know how it works. But like when it comes to these new characters,
Yes.
do you often meet with the writers about that stuff?
No, generally you receive a script,
Okay.
and you have the script there, and from there you start to do some thumbnail sketches and develop a look that you think will work for the character. And you want to know the scale of the character, if it's live hand, a rod, what is conceived. Is it a two-person, or is it a one with rods? This sort of thing. So that sort of thing, and that's something Carol Lee would sort of guide as well. And you'd have sketches, and so it goes through a whole process of what the script is, what the puppet has to do. We knew, for example, our Richard Hunt, and I don't know if you've read the book of the current Funny Boy. Have you heard about the book about Richard Hunt?
I've heard it. And it's funny, actually. I was talking to I don't know if you know Billy Barkerst.
The name sounds familiar, but
He
I
he
don't.
did he did Ernie on Sesame Street before Peter did.
Oh yes, yes, I
Yeah,
do
I
remember.
was it's
Yes.
Billy and I were just talking about that. I said to him, I haven't needed to stop at a bookstore in a while. I don't even know if that Richard Hunt book is available here, but I've heard pretty good things about it, and I
Oh,
am
it's
looking forward
wonderful.
to reading it.
You will love it. You will
Awesome.
love it. I'm quoted in the book, but
Oh wow.
oh yeah, I knew Richard, and he was a great. That's the other thing. He was a great opera lover, and so this character was perfect for him. As a matter of fact, he took. I don't know if you've seen some of the scenes, but he has a kerchief, the character, and that
Mhm.
he takes from Pavarotti, not Placido Domingo, but so it's a combination of
Oh.
for him. So that's a Pavarotti thing, that Pavarotti, and he would wipe himself with the kerchief. But the book is wonderful. I have to tell you, I reading it, I have all these underlines and check marks, and it was like a map of my time at Muppets, and peripherally I was there, or I was at that, or I remembered that. So it's a wonderful, really documentation, and a wonderful. She had really great research and what was happening through those great important years of Sesame Street and Muppets and Jim Henson.
Yeah, so that the author, like I followed the blog, that she did a great job with research. Like you could tell how dedicated she was to it, because like I read all the interviews with people like Jerry and Dave, and I think Judy Freuberg.
Yeah. And yeah, it's she's done. We had her at the O'Neill, as a matter of fact, this past week. So she read some parts of the book, and she got to sign my book as well. I got her to sign it.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
So but yeah, really... Placido Flamingo, I did kind of notice that he would wipe himself like after a performance. I think my favorite Placido episode ever was one that Mark Saltzman had written, and it was after Maria and Luis started dating. They weren't married, but they were dating at the time. Placido Flamingo comes in to the fix-it shop, and he's like, "That is the man who loves you, and that is how he says goodbye. See you later, honey." As if he's supposed to make some kind of dramatic exit, because like Placido Flamingo, I've seen people like this on sets I've worked on, but he's a method performer. Like there is no I'm on stage, I'm off stage. It's I am always the performer. So he falls head over heels with Maria.
That is Richard Hunt was too. So I think that's a wonderful reflection of, he was a one of a kind, Richard was, and an amazing talent, an amazing human being, and a real loss. But anyway, you read the book, please, and have her on your show.
I'm thinking about that, actually.
Oh yeah,
after I've read the book, I'll
be perfect.
Before the book came out, I knew I wanted to do like a Richard Hunt related video, because I mean, like, and I was talking to Billy Barkhurst about this. We've had so many documentaries, including the one that just came out, and books about Jim Henson. Not a lot about Frank Oz, but that, and I've heard Frank say it himself. Somebody was like, "Are you gonna write a book?" He's like, "I don't want to write a friggin' book. That takes too long."
Yeah.
But you know, and Jim Henson and Frank Oz in the Muppet world, those are household names for what they've done in and outside of the Muppets. But you mentioned people like Jerry Nelson, Richard Hunt, Marty Robinson, Kevin Clash, David Rudman, Dave Goelz, Steve Whitmire, and people are like, "Who the hell is that?" Yeah. So it's nice that somebody like one of those people is getting the recognition that they need.
Definitely. And he will live on through this book, not only through his work on Muppets and Sesame Street and all Muppet Show, but through this book. This is so wonderful.
Well, to help promote the book in my own special way, I did I do these things sometimes called Nostalgia Talk bonus. And I've done those in many different ways. This one was a clip show of previous guests talking about Richard. The funniest Richard Hunt story that I have ever heard, apart from the very famous when he didn't want to do Elmo and throws it to Kevin Clash, like, "You do this stupid thing, I'm tired of doing it," was from Fraggle Rock. It was Gord Robertson. I don't know if you know Gord.
Yes, okay. I do.
Canadian. That's right. Richard came to Fraggle Rock hungover. And Gord put it best when he says that Richard said under his breath but out loud, "Ugh, why did I pick a job where I have to be happy all the time?"
I love it. That's Richard. That's funny.
So when it comes to these parody characters like Placido Flamingo and Meryl Sheep, you talked about the inspiration for Placido, how it was like not entirely based on Placido Domingo, but more so named after Placido Domingo to create the parody of it being an opera singer, which is a clever pun. So obviously they don't want it to look like too similar. How does that work? Does it like, okay, we'll make it look like a regular opera singer, but not too much like who it's based on? Like, how does that work?
Well, I think it's to varying degrees. With Meryl Sheep, it's more about the dialect they gave her.
Hmm.
She was famous for doing dialects. So the puppeteer gave her I think it was at the time of Sophie's Choice. So
Hmm.
she gave her that dialect to add to that exotic actressy sort of quality of Meryl.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. There you go. You're a man of many voices. You gotta. Do you perform? I think you do. Yes.
I have, yeah. Actually, on the first ever show, I work in the film business. But on the first ever show that I worked on, we were like an incredibly tiny group of crew members. So everybody got to do a little bit of everything, and because of that, some of us were also in it, as either like they saw our face or they didn't. I'm in it twice. The first time I got to do a voice, which was actually an impression, much like what you've been seeing, but it was an impression of Judge Judy, which I was not committed to, but I did that in the sound test, and they're like, do that. I'm like, I'm not playing Judge Judy for this character. They wouldn't let me do anything else.
And you were doing a puppet?
That one was a cartoon character. It
Ah.
was a hybrid series, live action, puppets, cartoons. Believe it or not, the week after that, I did get to do a puppet. One of my friends was puppeteering this character, the friend who helped get my name in for the series because he was working on it as an animation director. And I was assisting him, like kind of like doing his sound, but still kind of watching how he worked. And when he left, we still had to get some shots with the puppet. And I looked at the producer and I was like, "Is it okay if I puppeteer him?" He's like, "Do you want to?" I was like, "I asked, so of course I want to."
Oh,
I had no lines, but there was a scene.
excellent.
Yeah, there was a scene where the kids. It was a kids show, so the kid actors were playing music, and I had the puppet kind of follow the way that it sounds, like blink, blink, and then turn the head to the next one, blink, 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 and then kind of just dance when they're all putting it together.
So have you done any other puppeteering since then, or?
Not professionally. I've put my name into audition for things. There's not a lot of puppeteer shows
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
There
yeah.
is a lot of voice acting stuff here, and I've put my name into audition for a few of those.
Excellent, excellent. And when you
Mhm.
say you're in the film business, what do you do?
So I've done a couple of different things on that show. In addition to being in it, I helped out with camera, sound, and props, and I also worked on. I don't know if you are familiar with the TV show From.
No, I'm not.
It's
No.
like the biggest new horror show in the world these days, and it's shot like very close to where I am.
Excellent.
So I did art department stuff. They also used some of my ideas. They're like, come up with names for a rehab center. And I was like, okay. And one of them they ended up using. And I was like, oh, wow, cool. I'm getting
Excellent.
recognition for this. So I did art department for 4 weeks and kind of moved around with props, set deck, and scenic, and then got a full season contract on that show for set deck.
Excellent. That's great. But I think part of you is a performer.
I think so too. Again, I've put my name in for that stuff and still am.
Well, I would encourage you to set up a camera and a monitor in your home.
Oh,
And
done that.
oh, you've done that.
Yep.
And the other
I
thing is they do Muppet auditions.
mm-hmm.
And you should just keep in the loop on that. Get your name in there. They're in New York generally or in LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've talked to Marty Robinson and Peter Linz about that a few times.
Okay, keep in the loop about that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that would be very wise, and keep work with the monitor every now and then so
Mm-hmm.
you get that technique down.
Mm-hmm.
You seem to have the personality and the I think the energy for that.
Well,
So
thank you. I appreciate
yeah,
that.
no, definitely.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, with the parody characters like Meryl
Yeah.
Sheep,
Yes.
I forget where we were at that.
Well, we're talking about the balance between what is in the script and what is the actual character that we're or the performer we're parodying. How much of that? What's the balance of that?
Mhm.
Right? That's what you asked, I think.
Yeah, because I wanted to know, like, obviously, you wouldn't like make it look too much like the person that you're spoofing.
Right, right.
But of course, it would be it would, like, with Meryl Sheep especially, like, it had the big hair like
Yes,
Meryl
yes, yes.
Streep does, but to a point where it's not like totally mimicking her.
Right, right. And I think it was more what was written in the script, making it into, and again, the voice is really what linked it to, and not so much the look, I think. But making the eyes important was a part of that, the actress's eyes, trying to make that the focus of the face in terms of the design. And I think that basically is it. And not going too, not too close to Meryl, but keeping it that general sort of a sheep that's an actress.
Okay. So what was your involvement in the special Muppet Family Christmas? Because like that is honestly one of the, maybe even the best Muppet special that there is, and we'll probably never see anything like it again.
Yes. So to be honest with you, this was in the book, the Richard Hunt book as well.
Okay.
And I was on set as a wrangler.
Mhm.
But the majority of what I did that I remember, other than being a wrangler, I didn't build any of the characters on that, I have to tell you. But I
Okay.
did do the photography back in New York of just documenting the characters. I
Mhm.
remember doing that. And I have to tell you, just in terms of my trajectory, is I was starting to dabble in photography. I never did photography in a serious
Okay.
way as a kid
This is
or
a
anything.
good lead in, actually. That was going to be my next question,
Your
how
next
that how
question.
the
Okay.
photography thing happened. So
So
this
what happened was, I started to, again, my friend Jan, I have to give her credit. This is someone I went, Jan Shapiro Rosenthal. We went to college together. She helped me with my MFA. She was in my MFA production and all, but she went immediately to New York to work in the workshop because she was an incredible designer and builder, and went into Muppet Show. And one year she, in early years, she came back and she had started to do photography. It was dabbling with playing with the camera. And I looked up to her so much. I got a camera and started playing with photography as well. And so she really was my inspiration. And I started taking some classes while I was working in the Muppet workshop. And then there was an on-set photographer who was there and working, would be documenting, not every day, but, occasionally when we were on set, there was an on-set photographer, and sort of a light bulb went off. Oh, and the other thing, again, going back to Carol Lee, is she would have us document. If we created a puppet or a special prop, there was like a book that was the archive, and we would take pictures. It was a camera on set, and we would document that puppet or prop just for our own records that went with the patterns or whatever that went in the pattern book, but also was in this, we called it a Bible, an onset Bible, whatever. But I was shooting photos then and playing with it. There was an on-set photographer, and I thought, and it was freelance as well. And I thought, oh, freelance photography, shooting performance. And so eventually, I decided to make that leap. I started taking classes, and I did 5 seasons, and it was like, and then I got some work through Sesame Workshop, through Children's Helps You Workshop, and they became one of my first clients. And so I left the workshop, and I was on staff too. I was on staff for 7 years, and I walked away from it, and kept my relationship with Muppets, and was on the Henson Foundation and different things like that. But I was like, okay, I've done the building and designing, and I'm gonna try this. And that's another thing that I tell young artists, young people that are in their career trajectory, is be open to possibilities. Keep your eye on the prize, know what you're about, what you love, but doors are going to open. Possibilities, opportunities, be available. You don't know. And I would never in my youth have said I was going to be a photographer, but I loved it. I was photographing performances, my background, and I was photographing performance. And I was able to, I know the language. It's, to me, it's a dance, and I love shooting dance, for example, and it's a partnership. I'm in sync with the choreography, and I'm able to partner. And when I move with it, I'm dancing with them, and I can anticipate the move. Hopefully, I'm learning the language of the dance, and that's how you're getting those shots. Hopefully, not always, but and it's I love it. it's really and the other thing, the last thing that I'll tell you is that when I was on set, the New York Times arts photographer Sarah Kruglich came on set for an assignment. And so I talked with her, and I said I'd be interested in working with the Times, and what's the contact and all. And she gave me the contact there. So I was able to get an interview, and I became what's called a stringer. And this is 20 something years ago. And so I started freelancing with them with the arts pages. And that was amazing. Exactly. It was, and a lot of the clients I have now are those that I was sent out on assignment for. And in those days, I was getting, say 3 to 5, 6 assignments a week with the Times. That has all changed now because of digital and the cutbacks in the paper. But I did 3 Broadway shows for him this past season, plus some other work. So it's been a great, that really took off for me.
So, do you have any celebrity stories from Sesame Street that you'd like to share, whether it's like as a photographer, as a performer, or when you were just on set, when you were still in the workshop?
Well, I can tell a funny story.
Okay.
And this is, when you're shooting on set, there are 3 cameras that you are dealing with. And basically the center camera is they're 1, 2, and 3, and they're calling camera cuts between those for different angles. And generally the center camera tends to be the dominant camera, and that has the wider shot, just generally. And so you're generally with that camera, and you can't get in the camera's viewpoint. You're with it, but you're keeping peripherally, you are looking around you at all times, but you're seeing through the camera. And in the first days I started, the early days, we weren't shooting digitally. You had a camera that you had a black and white and a color slide, and you would be switching between the two, and you had a blimp case around it. They used to make hard cases, but I made a soft one because of my Muppet building techniques. So I was able to, and I still have them, are these soft like Muppet foam covered in black fabric, but that would cover the sound. Now we shoot digitally, the speeds are much better, and I can put the camera on silent, so I don't have to worry about sound. But one story I'll tell you quickly is Gloria Estefan was on, and she was doing a Congo around the street.
Oh yeah, that one. Come on, shake it, baby, do that congo.
Wow, you are good. You are good. So
that song's from when my parents were younger.
Yeah, we're talking about in the 1980s, late 1980s.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm photographing that, and I have to move with it. She's got a long line. There's a long line of puppeteers on carts below their puppets on rollies. And so she's leading it, I'm following. And in this case, there's a cameraman, Frank Biondo, who was with the show from the beginning. I'm sure you've heard about him.
Oh yeah.
Right, the pilot. He's there, and I'm following, and I'm getting this and the whole thing. And all of a sudden, as I'm moving, I step on his cable. And his camera jerks, and the whole thing has to stop, right? Because and I'm looking anyway, so he would never let me forget that I did that to him, that I blew the whole take because of, but it happens. You're in the moment, and stuff happens. So that's one memory I have. Shooting the first ladies, I've photographed 5 first ladies, on the set. 4 of them, I think, were on the set of Sesame, and that was an honor, and really very special. And having the FBI, the Secret Service are there,
the Sheepret Service.
Yes, going through, and there was even them playing and going through Big Bird's. Big Bird went out of the set, out of the studio, and then taking their magic thing and going over Big Bird to make sure that he was safe to come on.
Wait, the actual Secret Service?
Yeah, they played with that. They thought it was so. Very funny.
I saw a picture of Jill Biden with the sheeprit service.
Is that right? Is that
Yeah.
with sheep?
Mm-hmm.
Very funny. And there was a time when Obama and Biden were together, the two first ladies were
Mm-hmm.
together, and that was fun to have them both on the show. So
That must
good
be a
stuff.
real honor to have, like, because I've seen like Hillary Clinton and Laura Bush, and you
Yeah,
mentioned Obama and Biden.
yeah,
That must be really something to have somebody that high up in the, I don't know that much about
yeah,
politics,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
that high up in the US government be on your show. Because I mean, like,
Oh, definitely.
yeah, I mean, you know,
There's funding. They
they're
still,
helping they're helping kids basically. Because I
yes,
remember Laura Bush, I think it was talking about healthy eating, I believe it was.
yes, yes, yes. They're definitely promoting very positive behavior and giving it a lot of visibility.
Mm-hmm.
So good stuff.
So
Yeah.
let's wrap it up with a fan question. When I announced the show on Nostalgia Talk social media, I asked any listeners, do you have any fan questions that any of you have? Just leave a comment. This one comes from Anthony Thompson, who is a regular contributor to the fan questions. He always
Great.
comes up with some really, really good ones.
Excellent.
And for you, he wants to know, talking about funny stories during shoots, are there stories of a puppeteer making you laugh during a photo shoot?
Oh, oh my goodness. Wow. Oh,
Because that kind of makes me think of something you were talking about earlier with Jim and Frank. Because I remember Norman Stiles and Emily Kingsley saying that when they had Bert and Ernie on hand, they were those characters. Like they did not communicate as Jim and Frank when they weren't shooting. They were Bert and Ernie. They stayed totally
yes.
in character.
Yes. I'm trying to think. I'm going to say that it's more in awe of their I think seeing them create and
Okay.
seeing the puppeteers develop bits of action. That is for me a wow. Like I love to see that creativity. And that's not so much a funny thing, but I just to see them from the point of view of their characters, take something, communicate to each other, play with different ideas. That is where the wonder really, really happens for me of being there and seeing that. That's where the magic is.
Hmm.
And that's what I love.
Okay, that's a good answer because like we said, you know, when people see like when kids see these puppets, they don't care about the person attached to them. I don't
Yeah.
know I don't know if you were there for this, but Noel McNeil told me once that a kid comes to the set and wants to meet Oscar,
Yes.
and this is a good example of like waiting for all the big stars to come out because again, that puppet is a celebrity. So
Right.
Carol puts Oscar on his hand and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And the kid's like, "That's not Oscar. That's an Oscar puppet."
That is funny.
Where's the real Oscar? And Carol's like,
Um,
okay, just a second. So he goes behind the can, pops Oscar up, and it's the same puppet. The kid does not care,
I
but
love
he comes
that.
out and it's like, hey kid, how you doing?
I love it. Oh, that's great.
I mean, talk about making magic. I mean, but that kid
Yes.
clearly that kid was not stupid.
Yeah. And that's how he knew him as the full character, and that's how he wanted to see him in that way.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's all I've got here. Is there anything you want to say to
Okay.
wrap up?
I think that's it. I would just say that that I have been very lucky, I guess, is what I would say that it's that being a part of all of this in any way is just documenting it, helping to create some, design a little of it. It's been an amazing ride. I don't take it for granted. I think what it's contributed to society and to just the joy of living and all of that. And I just feel so fortunate and I'm so thankful, and I don't take it for granted.
Mhm.
Um, it's been amazing,
That's
amazing, and
sweet.
I'm thankful. And I have to say also, I worked with Jane Henson, and and the Henson family. I'm on the Henson Foundation, vice president of
Oh.
the foundation, and I've been involved for about 30 years. And that Jim started a foundation, the Jim Henson Foundation, to promote American puppetry, other styles, puppeteers that are not doing Muppet style puppetry and puppet theater around the country. And his daughter Cheryl has taken that mantle and has gone with it, and beyond expectation. That foundation continues to this day, and the family contributes in amazing ways to American puppetry and the puppet arts. So it is an amazing legacy that they have, and to be work with them is a gift in that way as well.
That's sweet. Well, Richard, thank you for joining me for Nostalgia Talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
And to all you listeners, you guys know where to go for news on upcoming ones. Stay tuned, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.